This is Sunday, June 10th, 1990. This is James R. Siebold interviewing Menachem Limor. Excuse me, Mr. Limor, would you please give me your full name?
My full name is Menachem Limor. My former name was Menachem Limor, and I changed it to a Hebrew name while I was still living in Israel.
What year was that you changed the name?
In 1966.
1966. What is your date of birth?
I was born on November 1st, 1930.
Your place of birth?
Częstochowa, Poland.
Could you please spell Częstochowa for us?
Yes. Czestowca.
The name of your spouse?
Leah.
The date and place of your marriage?
It was June 17, 1954.
We're going to have an anniversary soon.
That's right, coming up.
Your father's name, please.
My father's name was Israel.
And his date and place of birth?
It was 1898. He was born also in Poland, Częstochowa.
And your father's occupation?
He was a shoe store, a shoe factory owner.
Your mother's maiden name?
Lewkowicz.
And could you spell that, please?
Lewkowicz.
Thank you. The date and place of your mother's birth?
It was the year 1900 in Klobucko.
Could you spell that name, please?
Klobucko.
You're very good with your spelling. Your mother's occupation?
She was a housewife.
Could I please have the names of your children?
Yeah. I have a daughter, Miri. She was born on October 21st, 1955 in Israel. A daughter, Hagit. She was born on March 15, 1960, also in Israel. And a son, Yoram, he was born on April 21st, 1967, also in Israel.
Thank you. Menachem, the years before the war, you were located where?
Before the war, I was in Poland, Częstochowa. I was just a student in second and third grade.
I see. Your family, who all was living with you there before the war in Częstochowa?
My father, mother, and two other brothers. I had two more brothers.
What were the brothers' names?
One was Erwin. He's living now in the United States. His name is Erwin. But we were over there. We were calling him Itzhak.
Yes.
And I had another brother, Wowek, which he was killed in the Holocaust.
In the Holocaust. Which were you the oldest of the?
No,
boys?
I was the youngest.
You were the youngest of them. What could you give us some idea of what the life for your family was like before the war?
Well, we had a very good life because my father was well off, and we didn't miss nothing except, living still even in Poland. You always felt that you are a Jew, but
is that
because
right?
we were well off, we didn't feel maybe as much as some other people. But
But even well before the war, there was a sense of being different, separate as a Jew?
Oh yes, you are always singled out as a Jewish person. I think in all Europe.
I see. Yourself, you were born in 1930.
Yes.
Is that right? So in 1938, you had been 8 years old.
That's right.
You were in school at that time.
That's
then.
right.
And what kind of school were you in?
Well, this was it. We had over there a Jewish school, and I was going to school was named Weinstock School. That was the name of the principal. It was school mostly for Jewish kids.
Mostly for Jewish kids. Were you a good student?
Yes.
Yes, and you enjoyed school?
Yes.
Yeah. Your brothers, they were also in school at this time?
Yes, he was going to a gymnasium, which was like equivalent of a high school here.
I see. And Were there other kinds of activities that you might have been involved in, youth movement kinds of things, Zionist kinds of things, or were you too young for that?
No, I was too young for that. My brother was involved a little bit.
What kind of thing was he involved in?
Well, there was a movement called Hashomer HaTzair, and he was a member of that movement, which was talking also about going to Israel, to Palestine, then going to Israel, and
Was that right?
yeah.
And what the name of that group was?
Hashomer HaTzair.
I see. I see.
Hashomer HaTzair, which to translate will be the young guard.
Is that right? Yes. And these were young people whose desire was to go to Israel.
Yes, yes.
My goodness. Both of your parents were very religious Jews?
My mother was more religious than my father, but my father was attending synagogue every holiday, like Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Passover. He was going to attending, and I was going with him. I was going with him every holiday.
Every holiday. Do you remember at all when your life began to change leading up to the German invasion? Do you have any memories of that?
Well, my life changed at the beginning of the war, which was September 1939, that we were running away from our town because there was a threat that there would be maybe some fighting in towns, so we were running out away from towns into small villages, just to run away from the war, from fighting.
What kind of fighting were you running from at that point?
The Germans were invading Poland.
I see.
And that's what the Polish government told us, to run away from cities because there will be some fighting. On the radio they were telling people to run away from the cities, go to small places because there might be fighting and resistance in cities.
And you were with your family at that time?
Yes.
And this was, the whole town was told to flee. It wasn't just the Jewish population.
They told everybody to flee because there would be fighting. This was on the radio, on the national radio.
Yes. Do you actually have memories of that time when you were running with your family?
Yes, because on the way we were, the German planes were shooting at, on convoys. There were people, you could see people, miles of people running away from cities, and German planes came and were shooting on it. This was the first time I saw actually a dead man that was killed over there.
Is that right? It must have been very frightening for an 8-year-old boy.
Oh yes, it was very frightening. We were hiding. Each time the planes were coming, we were leaving the roads and running into forests that were nearby, hiding.
Where did you actually go to? Where were the people marching to?
To smaller villages, smaller places where maybe they won't be fighting. That's what people believed.
I see.
That maybe in a small place there won't be that much resistance and be more chances of survival.
Where did your family actually go at that time?
We went to a place that was called Przerów.
Przerów. Can you spell that?
Przerów, I would spell it P-R-Z-E-R-O-W.
Okay.
It was a small village that my father knew someone in that village. He wanted to go to get to that place because he knew someone over there that maybe we would be able to stay for a while.
And did that in fact happen?
Yes. We got over there about a week or 10 days, and after Poland was captured by the Germans, we returned to Częstochowa.
Then you could return. And what was life then like in Częstochowa when you returned?
Well, shortly after that, the Germans said for Jewish people that we had to go with Jewish people had to go with bands with a band on the arm with a Magen David on it, just to identify you as a. And it was, I don't remember. I think it was written on it, Jude, which means Jew in German. And you were already, you couldn't go. And then they made a place that was called a Jewish section and an Ari section and a Polish section. And people had to move to live in the Jewish section, which later became also a ghetto, which we called the Big Ghetto. This was then the Big Ghetto in Częstochowa.
So when you came back, there were 3 different sections in the town? Two.
One was the Jewish section and the Polish section.
So when you returned to Chester Hall, you were not able to return to the home that you had left?
Actually, our house was in the Jewish section,
It
so
was.
we could return to our house.
How else was it different than living in that section than before?
Well, you couldn't, my father, he had a shoe factory. You couldn't produce, and you couldn't sell, and you couldn't buy. Food was more scarce. And there were also, it was, while we were not over there, the Germans also took some people that stayed over there, mostly Jewish people, and killed about quite a few.
They just took these people out?
Yes, and killed them. And it was on a Monday. I remember it was a Monday, but it was called the Blutige Montag, which means the Bloody Monday.
Bloody Monday.
Yeah. And on that day they killed, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 people.
Do you remember what date Bloody Monday was? Is it right now?
I can't remember. I can find out.
That's
I have
okay.
a book I can find out,
That's
but
okay.
it was at least it was September. It was in September.
In September.
Or October.
Yes.
Or late September or early October, something.
How did you personally find out about the death of these Jews?
Well, we knew about it, and people were already always afraid.
Already.
Even me, as a boy, when I saw a German walking the street,
You knew.
tried to disappear so he won't see me.
Uh-huh.
Because I was frightened already, and we knew that we have to be to watch, to be afraid of.
Were you frightened as a Polish citizen or frightened as a Jew?
Especially as a Jewish.
You knew that as a Jew.
Because we were the Jewish people were the first ones that they tortured, killed, or made their life hard.
And as an 8-year-old boy, you already knew that fact.
Yes, sir.
I see. How did it go from there? Now you're back in your home, but now this is a ghetto section. Go on from there, please.
The Jewish people started somehow to organize themselves. Started to deal with. There were some people who were dealing with the German to fulfill their wishes. Whatever orders they will give, will do. Just that they won't hurt us. That they will spare our life. And they let us to live in that Jewish section.
Mm-hmm.
But we had to do. There were some. You had to make some money contributions to the German, and to give them all kinds of things. Even they needed some furniture or clothes for the army. You had to give it to them, and they were also probably busy with the war.
Mm-hmm.
So they let us for a while. It quieted down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, even the school that I was going to we started studies, but we started studies, we were studying, we had to study German in case that if the German will come in, that they will see that we are studying German language, so maybe they won't be that mad at us, because it wasn't legal, but we were doing things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But still everything was, you were always a threat. You were always afraid
that something was going to happen.
Yeah, something might happen, and something bad might happen.
When you were talking about how certain personal property was taken away, how did that happen?
It wasn't taken away. You had to bring it out wherever they wanted. And between the Jewish people, that was said, well, we have to supply them with that much of that article or whatever.
I see.
And everyone had to contribute and give it.
I see.
Otherwise, if you didn't fulfill that order, then they would come and they would take it by themselves and maybe kill some people also. In order to save lives, you were giving away property or whatever was asked.
Was there actually some sort of Jewish government that you had instituted?
They called it not. It wasn't a government, but it was like a Jewish committee which was dealing with them, and later even was made up a Jewish police.
I see.
To make order, which was, of course, they were doing everything that the Germans told them, but It was done by, sometimes, the Germans told the Jewish police, we need to this and that, and the Jewish, or to bring somebody. If they wanted to arrest somebody, they could tell the Jewish police that the Jewish police would bring him.
What was the feeling among the Jewish people about the ones who were acting as the police?
It wasn't a good feeling, and really at the time we were talking they are just collaborators with the Germans. And some of them didn't do it willingly, but in order to save their lives or their family lives, sometimes they did things like this too.
Yes. The amount of supplies for eating, for example, that you were able to get during that time, were people eating well, or was this more difficult?
No, it was more difficult because it wasn't even rations or something like this, but you could buy from the Polish. If you took chances, you could buy from the Polish people. There were Polish peasants that bring food. There were Polish markets that you could buy. You could buy food if you had money enough. But of course, it was also in danger because if you got caught with, they could kill you for it.
They could kill you for having.
You could buy you could buy what was in the Jewish section, but if you wanted, but in the Jewish section you couldn't produce.
I see.
You couldn't produce food. You had to buy it from someplace. Once it was in the Jewish section, you could buy it, but to bring it over from the other section to the Jewish section, this was the greatest danger. And they were catching somebody, they easily could kill him for it.
Was the Jewish area at this time fenced in? Was there any physical boundary?
No, at this time it wasn't. At this time it wasn't fenced.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. What was the attitude of the non-Jew in Poland towards the Jew at this time?
Well, most of them didn't care about it. I won't tell. There were some that tried to help us in any way they could. But most of them didn't care about it. They went. They didn't care what's happening in our section. They went about their lives in their section without caring about it. There were sometimes people that were going out to the Polish section, in order to buy something or sell something or meet somebody. And there were a lot of times when they were recognized by Polish people as Jews. They were told, the Germans were told about it, and they got caught and they could get killed or beaten up.
The Poles in some ways were collaborating with the Germans in terms of keeping the Jews.
Yeah. It was, I would say, they both hated us. They both didn't like us.
Yes.
Some hated us more maybe, and some less, but the Poles didn't like us either.
What was the attitude among the Jewish population at this time? Were people frightened?
Yes.
Were people feeling?
This was an experience that nobody ever went through. It was something very new. It never happened. As much as people, as Jews suffered in Poland, it's not can be compared to what was happening now.
No.
And really, people were astonished and didn't know at the beginning how to act, and it took time till you could understand. There were things that you heard about, and you didn't believe that it happened.
Is that right?
Yes.
Can you remember something of that kind?
Well, I remember later. I remember that when they were talking about the death camps.
Yes.
Some Jewish people didn't believe it in the beginning.
Yes.
Even that they were told by Jewish people that ran away from those death camps, but still, how is that possible? How can something like this happen? That it never happened.
Never.
And as long as you have the word, it never happened, and people didn't believe it in the beginning.
Did your father believe it? Do you know?
My father, he died very early after the German occupation. It was the first winter, the German occupation. He was taken out, they came in, they needed to clean roads from snow, and my father was taken out in his pajamas without shoes to clear snow from roads, and he got sick from then, and he never fully recovered, and he died.
That was in the first year of the occupation?
Yes, in 1940.
They came into your home, physically came into your home and
Yes,
told him that he was
yes,
going to be
yes.
somebody?
Not told him, just took him.
Just took him. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What was it like for you?
Well, I was then 9 years old, and I just didn't understand what's happening.
Oh,
I
this is
didn't.
so
I didn't understand at that moment what's happening. I was just scared that they're taking my father away. I didn't know even where they're taking him away. They just took him. They didn't tell you we are going for this or that. Just you come with us and that's it. And it was scary. And then when he came, he was sick all the time.
Was he able to get any medical care? Are we on?
Yes.
This is Jim Siebold on June 10th, 1990, interviewing Menachem Limor. You were saying that after you came back to Czestochowa, after leaving it for a short time, things, while certainly different, still were not as tough as they were going to become.
That's right.
When did things begin to change for the worse?
Well, it was in 1942 they decided to close up the Jewish section and put us in a ghetto, which was already with barbed wire around, and was watched by Germans and Ukrainian soldiers.
Ukrainian.
Yeah.
So there was roughly about a 2 to 3 year period of time where
Yeah.
after the occupation, but before what you're describing now.
Yeah, but it was
Is that right?
1942.
I don't want to move too quickly into the new. Are there other things to be said about your life or your family's life before 1942 that I haven't touched on yet?
Well, nothing special. That only this that my brother, as a young boy, 18 years old, had to take care of a family, and we lived all the time in fear of not knowing what will happen, when something will happen. We had to go identified, as Jewish people. You had to have a band on your arm, which showed that you are Jewish. You couldn't move freely you could move out of that Jewish section at all, because if you were caught over there, they could kill you for it. And all the life, they just built in you a fear. Slowly, you were fearing more and afraid, getting more and more afraid of them. You started to sit at home or just not to show yourself, just to try to be invisible. So if they don't see you, they won't do you nothing.
What did they do? How did they do that?
Well, they could do whatever they wanted. There was no law that will tell you what you can do and you can't do. If they could take a religious person and just, a rabbi or somebody and shave his beard or just make out fun of him, whatever they felt like doing.
Did you ever see that happen?
Yes, I saw as they shaved some. I didn't know that. I don't know if it's a rabbi or just a very Orthodox Jew with a beard, and they cut off his beard and made fun out of him, threw him on the ground, beat him, and for no reason at all, just for him being Jewish, and maybe they didn't like his looks. I don't know.
It was just random kinds of violence, and there was no law to protect anyone.
No law to protect nobody. You didn't have, as a Jew, you didn't have no rights at all.
Before the war in Poland, even though discriminated against, there were laws that you, as even a Jew, could depend on that would protect you.
Well, there were laws, and sometimes they protected you. I cannot tell always, because you had, even in Poland, you had sometimes pogroms that they called. They were killing Jewish people. But it was still, if you had at least a good lawyer, or if you had influence with money,
then you
could have some rights, buy yourself some rights. But here you couldn't even buy some rights. Because just being Jewish, you were a person with no rights. You were not a person. I couldn't call it a person even. Because you were a nobody.
Did the Polish Jew have any sense of what the threat from the Germans really was to themselves? No, I'm talking now prior to 1939. I'm backing up a little
Well,
bit.
that's really for me hard to say, because I, as
So
a
you were
young boy,
young.
I didn't think about things like this, or
Yes.
didn't talk about things like this.
So you
But
don't know.
I don't think that anybody could think that things like this will happen.
Not of this nature. No.
I know, as I told you, my father, we were a well-off family, and if my father would think that really some danger will be over there to Jewish people, we would go someplace. I don't know, to the United States or to Palestine or to another country. I don't know where, but I'm sure that my father, he was able, financially, he was able to take us anywhere. And if he didn't do it, then I'm sure that he didn't
see the
he
threat.
didn't see it coming.
So in 1942, do you remember the day when was it a day when things actually changed?
Well,
or?
they just there was a certain Ukrainian soldiers that we knew that they are liquidating ghettos and killing Jewish people, and we saw them coming. They came to Częstochowa and they surrounded the Jewish section, and then they started street by street to take out people, and the young people they were taking to work, youngsters and healthy people they were taking to work. Older people, children and women mostly, they were taking away and shipping them to Treblinka. That's what we found out later, that they were shipped to Treblinka. Our street was the last one actually to be, that they would come to take. And it was actually, our street was in front of a square, that on that square you could see them making those selections. Who is going, those people are going to work and those people are shipped away to Treblinka. And we could see it from a balcony, or through a window, we could see those things happening. I myself, my mother and my brother and me and some other people, we made some kind of hiding places to hide and not to go out, because we knew that as youngsters, like in my age, I won't be taken to work. I will probably be taken away to be shipped away.
You were too young.
Yeah, I was too young. So we were hiding. I was hiding in one place. My mother and brother, they were hiding in another place.
Let me ask you, before you go on, can you describe what the selection looked like?
Well, I myself didn't look through the window because as a youngster, I thought they wouldn't let me. But I know that just people were coming, they were coming into a house and starting to scream, Juden raus, means Jews outside, all the Jews outside. And then they were pushing them, pushing them toward that square. And that square, you had to pass through German people. They were saying, you go left, you go right, you go left, you go right. And that's how it was. The younger people were sent to, were collected in the places, in an old factory which was called Metallurgia. They were brought over them from over there. They were supposed to be taken to work.
Where was that work to be?
But we didn't know that yet. We didn't know yet then. But after they went like this street after street. After they finished with all the Jewish section, they moved all those people into a smaller ghetto, which I told you, a small ghetto, which was with barbed wire around. And from over there, people were going to walk to all kinds of places wherever the German needed them. It was on the railroad tracks, whatever was needed.
I see.
I myself didn't go to work, and I was always in hiding because we were afraid about it. As I told you, I was hiding in one place. My mother and brother were hiding in another place. And somebody informed Germans about that hiding place where my mother and brother were too. And my brother and some other people were taken away and also shipped out to Treblinka.
How was it found out where they were?
Somebody informed Germans about that hiding place.
You don't know who that was? Or?
We know, and I know that that person was he was Jewish, and he himself was also taken away with the same transport that my mother and brother were shipped away. He was also shipped away. He thought that maybe he will save his life if he will inform the German about it. So he was also taken away, and I never saw my mother and brothers from then on.
That was the last time you saw them?
Yeah. I myself was hiding in another place, and my brother helped me later to get also to that smaller ghetto from that hiding place, and I was started to hide in that smaller ghetto.
When you were in the hiding, how was it decided that you would go one place and your mother and brother would go another place? What was that like?
Well, actually, but it is a long story, but I will tell you. At the beginning, I was together with my mother and brother. One of my uncles that worked for Germans, he got permission from the Germans to take out his wife and 2 kids. But one of his kids was taken, he took with him before, so he took him out already from that hiding. Then he came to take out his wife and 2 kids, so I was like his second kid. He took me as his second kid.
Took you out of the ghetto entirely?
Out of that hiding place to another place where that was safer at that time.
I see.
That's how I survived. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here sitting before you and talking to you either. And this was my uncle, and that uncle, he didn't survive it. His 2 kids didn't survive it either. I miraculously, I don't know how to explain it. I did survive, but I survived it miraculously.
In your first hiding place, where was that? Where did you go for the first time?
The first hiding place was on a attic, which was closed down. This was closed down, so there was a small opening. If somebody didn't know that there are people, he wouldn't pay attention to it. But you know, once they were informed, the Germans, they found the place.
Were you alone at that point?
At that point I was still with my mother.
I see.
But maybe it's interesting that I will tell you when I told about my uncle and his 2 kids, which were younger than me actually. They were younger than me. We were hiding in that small ghetto. And we were hiding also over there, also in a place where there were, I don't know, maybe 20 people altogether were hiding in that place. And the Germans found that place. And there was a small opening that you had to crawl into that hiding place through a small opening. And the Germans, they were too lazy to go in, so they just opened that opening and let everybody out. And all the people started to going out. I was over there with my 2 cousins. I was over there, and I was trying to be the last one to go out. And when everyone went out, I didn't go out. I put my hands on the mouths of the 2 children that were smaller than me, and I was quiet, and we didn't move out. With a flashlight, through that opening, they put in a flashlight to look, and they said, "Is everybody out? Somebody still here?" We didn't answer, and they moved away. And just the 3 of us survived at that time. All the others were taken away and shipped away and didn't survive. So this was really, I don't know how it came to my mind to do it, but if I wouldn't do it, I would be gone with all the other people too.
You were 9 years old?
No, then I was 12, 13.
12 years old. And how old were your cousins?
One was about 10 and one about 6.
And somehow you had the presence of mind to...
Yeah, to do it. I don't know, it's not from experience. I did do it, just, you know, maybe from fear or what.
Fear.
I just, instinct to survive, I don't know how to call it, but that's what I did, and it worked at that time it worked.
How long did you stay then in that spot, in that hiding spot?
I was at the ghetto we were hiding on and off Because actually we were hiding. No, when we knew when Germans were coming, we were running into the hiding. When Germans were not there, we were more free. But it was for about a year.
For about a year, and any time a German came, you would have to go back into
That's
the hiding.
right, the hiding.
This was in the small ghetto.
In that small ghetto.
How
Right.
many people were in the small ghetto?
I cannot tell you exactly. I would say probably about 8,000.
8,000.
8,000, 10,000.
Yes.
It's really, I can't give you an exact figure, but I would say something.
What was life like in the small ghetto at that time? Now, this was a fenced-in
Yeah, it was
area?
a fancy ghetto that people were going out actually in the morning. People were going out to work.
They would leave the ghetto area,
Yeah.
go through the fence in order to do the
No,
work.
they had to. Everyone had his place of work, and they were going out, marching out in groups, which were Germans were watching them, but they walked out from the ghetto to the workplace, and then in the evening they were returning there. And there were some that were married people, and if their wives didn't work, they were staying also in the ghetto. But they had to go to work every day to march out.
What would you do during the day when they left, when the camp?
Well, if we were a few kids, so we were playing around, like kids did, and watching the older one were watching on the younger one. If you heard or saw the Germans were coming, we had some ways of giving signs one to another just to disappear, to hide. That's it. That's what we were doing. It was a waste. People, youngsters my age, should then study at school.
Yes.
So we were studying survival.
Studying survival. Who took care of you? Who fed you?
Well, my brother, he was going every day. He was going out to work. My uncle, he was going every day
I see.
out to work. They were coming back. They were bringing some food, whatever they got over there. Either they bought it from some Polish people because it was they were working in the Polish section or in the German section, so they were in touch somehow with people outside that they could buy from them some food. They were bringing it. It was also very dangerous because sometimes when they were coming back, they were searched. If somebody was found that he's bringing in something, then his end wasn't good.
What would happen?
He could be either beaten up or killed, whatever they wanted. It depended on the feeling of at that certain time what the German wanted to do. He could do anything he wanted. He could beat him up. He could kill him. He could whatever he wanted.
These were all now German soldiers who were the guards for the ghetto, not the Ukrainians anymore.
There were some the Germans. They were in charge. They were the commanders. Let's say the Ukrainian soldiers. They were. I would say they would be the private, and the German, he was the officer.
What was your attitude about the Germans and the Ukrainians at this time as a young man?
We hated them and were just afraid of them. But of course, we knew this was taught from the first day. I knew I have to watch out. If I see a German and later a Ukrainian, I have to just to disappear, not to be in his way. This was the safest thing.
Did you have any personal encounters, either in the large ghetto or in the small ghetto, with the German troops or the Ukrainian troops?
Well, I didn't have, except when I was hiding. I told you then that I was hiding and not going out. I was just trying not to be there. I had later in that small ghetto was also not. Existed probably about a year or something like this, and then they took again made a selection and took people to work in a ammunition factory in the same town. There was ammunition factory, and they took him to work over there and to live over there. The ghetto was also destroyed completely. They put dynamite in all the houses and just destroyed the whole ghetto.
So this was now a third move.
Yes.
This is getting even a smaller group now.
That's right. Again smaller. There was a selection. In that selection, I had also luck because actually I was at that selection you had to go out and stay in kind of a square like this in the rows, and then go to Germany, and they were taking out, some people they were taking out to work, and some they were taking out to a truck, and we saw that they loaded them on a truck and took them away.
You knew that? You saw that truck?
We saw the truck, and then I was taken out also. I was taken out together with some other youngsters. My brother was with me, and he said he wanted to go with me, and the German didn't let him go with me.
Yes.
Because he told him, no, you are going to work, to my brother. And he just pushed him away, and I stayed over there on the side, me and some more youngsters. We were lucky that the man in charge of the ammunition factory, the director of the ammunition factory, was German. He had, later we found out, he had some children our age. And he went with that first truck, I told you that they took away people. He went with that first truck, and that first truck was brought over into the Jewish cemetery, and the people from all the people from town were shut down. They just killed them.
Right outside the town. They just took them outside the town.
In the cemetery, in the Jewish cemetery, which was outside the town. And that director of that factory, he saw it. He came back and he saw here another group of youngsters that he knew what would happen to them.
Yes.
And he went to that German officer that was in charge of that selection and talked to him. And then he came together with him and asked us if we will work in his factory. We said, yes, we will work. So he said, they took us back to the group where my brother went already to work. Because it's probably that German director, he had to have some pity on us, or he knew that he had kids the same age, and he saw how all those were just shut down in cold blood for no reason, and probably from pity what he just came and said that he will take us to work.
My word.
Because if he wouldn't do it, I would be just in the second truck, taken over there and shut down.
Did you know that at...
All right.
This is Jim Siebold. It is June 10th, 1990. I'm interviewing Menachem Limor. You were mentioning, Menachem, that you were at one point selected to be in a group of children that were not allowed to work, that were put aside, and that you were later allowed to work. When you were selected out to not work, to stand with these other children, did you know what that meant?
We didn't know for sure. We knew that it doesn't mean nothing good for us.
Not good.
And we thought that probably be sent out with a train like other people were before us sent, you know, to Treblinka or to places like that. But I didn't know that they were that the first truck was taken out to the Jewish cemetery, and the kids were
not
shut
at that
down.
time. You didn't know that
at
at
that
that
time.
time.
I didn't know it. We found out about it later.
How much at this time did you know about what was happening at Treblinka's and Buchenwald's and Auschwitz? Was there any knowledge at all?
Well, there were, you heard rumors about it, but you know, you had rumors about, but really people didn't want to believe in it. I know, maybe it's kind of a self-defense that you don't want to believe something bad will happen to you. And you are just thinking, it's impossible. A lot of people didn't believe it.
Couldn't believe it.
No, there were people that were saying, you know, there were some youngsters they said, well, maybe we need to make kind of resistance, somehow to resist.
Yes.
If we are going to get killed anyhow, why should we resist? And mostly older people say, you are just talking nonsense because it's impossible that things like this will happen. And you know, there were people that believed in it, but there were people that didn't believe that something like this is happening.
Were there actually formed resistance groups in your...
Yes, there were.
Can you tell us about that?
There were, and actually, at the day that I told you before, at the day when I was hiding with those two kids, and they found also the hiding place where I was, and I didn't go out from the hiding place. At that same day, they came to find a resistance group, and they killed even one of those people tried to kill a German, and his gun didn't work. He got killed, and together with him about 25 people were killed in place right away, just for this that he tried to kill a German. So there were resistance. You couldn't resist actually, because actually what you could fight with your bare hands against guns, which you can't resist too much. But there were people that worked on it.
No.
And it took time to organize it.
When you were in hiding in the small ghetto, and then you mentioned that you were taken out for the selection. They must have found you. There was
no. They didn't find me. Just you see, my brother. They started in the morning. All the groups that I told them were going to work didn't go out to work. They didn't let him go out to work, and I went out together with my brother and my uncle. The other two kids and his wife, which was still alive then, stayed in the ghetto. Because this was, they thought that maybe, maybe I was already older, maybe I will survive somehow. And really, as long as I was standing in the line, and we were standing, where the first of all, when you came out, we had to stand in rows of 5. I was always trying to stand the last one, and with my shoes, I was always making up from the dirt a hill that I will stand on the hill that I will look taller. And as long as I was over there, it was all right. But then when we had to march before the German, then they thought that I was smaller and I was taken out. But
so it was thought that you might have been able to
I had a
pass.
chance, and they knew. There were talks, rumors. I don't know how rumors come about, but there were rumors that we won't return to that ghetto. That we will be taken out and they will liquidate the ghetto.
You knew that was going to happen.
Then we didn't know, but we suspected also because I told you those special Ukrainian troops that were coming were over there. And those Ukrainian troops, this was a sign of liquidating ghettos.
I see.
That's what we heard, and that's what we were afraid of. So I went out also then. I wasn't found then. As I told you, those two other cousins and my uncle's wife, that she stayed in the ghetto, they were killed over there. They exploded all the ghetto. They exploded all the buildings, and they were stayed in hiding over there. But they got killed because they exploded all the buildings. We didn't know that they will do this either, but that's what they did.
Did it feel like to you at that time that every day was a life and death matter? As a young man like that?
You never knew what would happen the next day.
And even at that age, you were feeling that your life was at jeopardy at all the time.
That's right. Every day was, as I'm telling you, I was later in that factory that we were taking, that ammunition factory. I was working over there, and when we saw Germans, I tried to work always. First of all, you had to be busy. They won't see that you don't work, because otherwise you could be taken away right away. And I always try, when I saw a German, I tried, if I worked here, if I could work in another, to move to do something else in a place that he won't see me. If it was under a machine or behind a machine or just, I was doing it because not to be seen was the safest thing for me, at least, as a youngster.
You were working in an ammunition plant then?
Right.
What kind of ammunition plant was that?
They were making over there bullets for rifle bullets.
This was still in Częstochowa?
Yes.
Is that right? This is a plant that had been built by the Germans for this purpose?
Yes, and the plant was called Hasak Pelzeri.
Hasak Pelzeri?
Pelzeri. That was a German, some German ammunition company. They brought machines. That they were making those ammunition.
And you were living then where?
In the place, in that factory, was built some wooden shacks.
Right in the plant.
Yeah, and we were working over there 12 hours, 2 shifts. One shift was working 12 hours at daytime, and the other shift was working 12 hours at nighttime.
Were there other Jewish work groups other than yours that were doing similar things?
No, there were in all that factory. All the Jews, there were, I don't know how many, maybe 1,000 or
1,000.
maybe In that factory, were about
Yes.
between 1,000 and 2,000 people were living in those wooden shacks. There were other factories. They took part of the people to another factories also. I don't remember even exactly what those factories were manufacturing, but there were about 3 places in Częstochowa.
Like that.
But our place, that Hasak Pece, was the biggest one. The 2 others were a little bit smaller.
And you think you had, was it 1,000 you said that you
I
felt?
think about maybe a couple of thousand. I
Maybe
really
one or
don't
two.
know.
Do you have any idea, Menachem, what the Jewish population of Częstochowa was before the war?
No, I really don't.
You don't
I
know?
really cannot tell.
Okay. Because it seems like it's getting whittled down at each,
No,
at each time.
No, you see, to Częstochowa and to that factory even were brought people from other towns too.
I see.
But there were towns, you
I
know,
see.
that people didn't. My brother's wife, she was from Lodz, which is another town. She was brought from Lodz to Częstochowa to work in that factory. So there were people
They
from
came
all over
all over.
Poland that were brought over to work over there. There were people that ran away from towns and came to Częstochowa. They wanted to work because they saw, well, they will work here, they will survive
This was
somehow.
life.
So it was a place that people were either brought or got some in some way just to try to survive by working.
Was this would be a strange question. Was there any social life at all among the Jews at this point?
There was no. So you had over there some people that that were husband and wives.
Yes.
There were a few small children that were always in hiding somehow. Miracle. I don't know even all the ways how they got over there, but they were
Maybe.
always in hiding. But there was no such. You didn't have no books, no newspaper, no nothing. You didn't have time even when to look at it, because at the morning you went to work, and you were at work all the time, and you worked all the time. And then when you came, you were so tired that you just laid down and fell asleep. If you could fall asleep, because there were that many bugs around that some people couldn't sleep even.
Sometimes that the age of you were at, that's the times when boys and girls begin to become interested in each other. Was there any of that going on at all?
No. First of all, we were really few. At my age, I don't know if there were about maybe 40. Maybe
So-
40 or at my age, because we didn't survive too many of those. Most of the people were people, able to work, young people from 18 till 35 or something like this. But from my age, we were very few. We were maybe 40.
So
But
there was,
also, everyone was always busy in work. You didn't have time to go out. To walk around or to date somebody. You couldn't do that.
how long did this period last for you in the ammunition plant?
This was about I think about a year and a half. It lasted till January 45.
January 45.
Yes.
Now we're very late in the war.
Yes, till January 45.
What happened in January 45?
January 45, it was a Monday that we changed, or Sunday or Monday, I don't remember, that we changed from day shift to night shifts. So I was a night shift and I was sleeping in that wooden shack, and suddenly Germans came and woke up everybody, took us out.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody. And all the night shift they took and put us in those cattle cars and a train, and we were taken away to Buchenwald. And
This was totally unexpected.
no, we didn't know about it. It's suddenly.
You had been there for a year,
Yeah.
long, doing productive work, and you felt that. Before you go on, let me ask you this question: was there a sense of what was happening in the war? Did you know that 1945, in fact, the Russians and the Americans were beginning to move
Well,
in?
we didn't have radios.
Yes.
We didn't have, you had rumors. There were some Polish people working also in that factory, the ammunition factory. They were telling all kinds of things, but for sure we didn't know. We didn't know, and this was really unexpected when in January 15, it was January 15, And I think January 16th, the Russians marched into the Częstochowa. It was just a day before the Russians
Just a
marched
day.
into our town. We were shipped out to.
You're woken up in the middle of the night.
No, it was in the morning.
Day.
It
You were
was
you were
morning,
sleeping.
and woke out. I still remember I had over there one of my cousins. She was a woman, and she saw that I am about to be taken away. She had a piece of bread. She gave me a piece of bread. And I put that piece of bread in my pocket. And on the way to Buchenwald, it's about a week. We were about a week and closed in that cattle car. They closed the door. They didn't open till we got to Buchenwald.
How long of a time was
It's
it?
about a week.
About a week.
Yeah, about a week. And I had that piece of bread in my pocket. So at night, when nobody saw it, I was breaking up a piece of that bread and eating
it.
And that was all the food I had for that week.
Was there other food that was given to you during that time
No, we
period?
didn't get no food, no nothing
For a week.
for a week.
And now you were not allowed out of the train
No.
car.
There were people that died in the
Yes.
in the car were laying
Yes.
with us.
What did you think during this time? What did you feel during this time?
Well, we didn't know where we are taken, for what reason. We knew that there was a lot of. Our train was stopped each time that a train with German soldier was passing by. Of course, they stopped our train. So we saw a lot of German soldiers in trains also going by. We didn't know what's happening, but we saw, according to, you could see through the window some places written downtown, so we knew that we are going into Germany. This we know that we are taken from Poland to Germany. But for what will happen to us, we didn't know till we arrived at Buchenwald.
What was it like to arrive at Buchenwald?
Well, we arrived at Buchenwald, we were taken, and it was very cold, it was winter, and Buchenwald is in Germany, in the mountains. And it was very cold and snow, and we were taken out from the train and brought into a place where we had to undress completely. They took away all our clothes. Then we went to a shower. After the shower, they gave us different clothes. I myself got the clothes. I had the clothes I didn't have. It was like an undershirt. It was completely open here. On my front here was open. I had a undershirt and a jacket, and a pair of pants with shoes with wooden soles. And then we just heard that we came to Buchenwald. We didn't know. I didn't know that
You didn't know.
Buchenwald. I didn't know that a place like this existed. How did I know?
Was there any thought in your mind that you might be put to death soon?
Well, the people over there told us no, that we were supposed to be over there shipped from Buchenwald to another ammunition factory in Italy. But the war progressed so fast that the American troops,
Yes.
the Allied troops progressed so fast that they didn't have
Yes.
time to take us out over there. And people in Buchenwald told us no, that usually that we will probably be sent to that ammunition factory.
And you were actually in Buchenwald just a very short time before liberation.
Yeah, it became about 3 months. 4 months.
3 months.
I came in over there in January, and I was liberated by the American Army on April 15.
Did you
11.
did you anticipate the liberation coming during those last weeks, or did it just
We
happen
knew-
one day?
No, we knew that something is happening because they started after we were over there. Well, they started to take out people from Buchenwald by foot. They were just marching them out from it. They didn't have all the trucks. They didn't have trains. So this marching them out by foot. And I know one of my friends. He walked from there till Czechoslovakia. They walked till Theresienstadt. He ended up in Theresienstadt. This is
How far of a distance is that?
I don't know exactly, but it's pretty far.
Pretty far.
It's pretty far, and a lot of people just died in that march. Just fell down from.
These were people being taken out of Buchenwald,
Yes.
being just marched out.
Just marched out.
And no destination known as they're being marched out.
Nobody knew. Just marched out, and whoever couldn't walk, either he got shot or died by himself, or just from exhaustion. And my uncle,
Yes.
that I told you, he was also in Buchenwald, and he was marched out.
These were selections that would occur to determine who would march out?
No, they first of all they took the Jewish people, whatever was Jewish. I myself wasn't marched out at the time because I got sick in Buchenwald, and I was in a hospital.
You had a hospital there?
And it was in Germany. It was a German camp. Germans are very efficient people, and they have their rules. There was a hospital. Doesn't matter what kind of hospital. There was a hospital.
Yes.
And I was in that hospital, and that's why I was marched out then. And my uncle, he got marched out. A lot of my friends or people that came together with me.
What happened to your uncle?
Once he marched out somewhere there, I never heard about.
And to this day, you don't have any idea
he
of
had
what
to
happened?
die on the march, or
Yeah, okay.
killed, or died, or no way to telling what happened to him.
Do you have any idea what happened to your cousins?
My cousins, I told you, they stayed with their mother in that small ghetto.
Yes.
And when they exploded all the buildings,
they were
killed over there at that time.
What was the actual liberation like? What happened?
Well, this was really a day that we woke up in the morning and we saw that there were no Germans in the watchtowers. Nobody was watching out, and we knew it. We didn't see Germans. We didn't see all the people. So we climbed up on the roofs of those barracks that we were living in, and we saw from both sides of Buchenwald American tanks coming from both sides of Buchenwald, circling out Buchenwald, and then a jeep with American soldiers came into Buchenwald. It was a joyful day that we'll never forget.
Yes.
I have here the release from Buchenwald. It was actually my first identification as a human being, because I didn't have no birth certificate, no passport, no ID, nothing. Who am I? So this was actually my first identification. All I was a number, which was 114,980.
Who issued this document?
This issued the American Army.
Yes.
Gave us that. It
And
is
this-
a stamp of the American Army.
And your name, as printed on this form, was what?
My name was Lipschitz till then. I changed my name to Limor later in Israel. But my name was Lipschitz.
You also had some other documents that you received at the same time, is that right?
Not at the same time, a little bit later.
Are there other things that you can...
No, but about your life before the war, you didn't really specify that you went every summer to
Okay.
spend. No, it was a
People
very
well
calm,
off. Doesn't
very
matter.
calm, nice.
That's not real. That meeting.
Yes, I'll come back. So, this is Jim Siebold. It is June 10th, 1990. I'm interviewing Menachem Limor. Menachem, you were going to show us another document that you received after the war.
Yeah, well, this was a document which I was in Buchenwald. I was over there
Could you turn it up, please?
I was over there as a political prisoner, and this is a document which was issued by people that were jailed in concentration camps as political prisoners. I, as a 14-year-old boy, it's hard to think that I was really a political prisoner. Just can show you. No matter what your age was. What?
How did that happen that you were identified as a political prisoner?
Because Buchenwald was actually a camp that mostly political prisoners were put over there. Hitler started that camp in, I think, in 1934, 35, and the first prisoners of there were Germans, which were political prisoners, which were Germans that were against him. So this was one of those, I was called a political prisoner.
And you also had another document, I believe.
Yeah, this is another document which this was issued already by English army, which showed that we are former concentration camp prisoners, and to help us in every possible way, because we are people, we didn't have no money, no nothing, so just we really needed help then, even if to stay where to a place to live or a place to eat. So this was just handed out to us that we'll be able to get first help.
What was your health like at the end of the war? When you came at the liberation, were you a healthy man?
Well, I was healthy. I was a healthy boy, a healthy guy. I just in Buchenwald, I told you I was in the hospital. It just we were standing sometimes hours outside in snow when they were counting us, and just I got a very bad cold.
Yes.
And I had the chance to go. They took me somehow for a short while to that hospital.
Were there other injuries that happened to you during your experiences?
Not injuries. I just got in that ammunition factory where I was.
Yes.
Yeah. We had every morning they were counting us if somebody didn't run away or whatever. And maybe I mentioned that you couldn't sleep in places because there were that many roaches and other things that didn't let you sleep, all kind of insects. So I was sleeping in a place outside, but one of those, and because of this, sometimes I was late for the count. And whoever was late for the count had to come into a certain place where you are receiving beating. You had to lean over, and they were beating you.
Did they do this with your clothes on, or did you take clothes off?
It was with the clothes on, and they made even. There was one that it happened to me a few times and once that man told me, "Today you will beat the people," and he gave me that stick, and because I wasn't the only one that was late, and I had to beat the other people, and they were really happy because I was a youngster and I couldn't beat them as hard.
This was good news.
He did, yeah. And I was beating, and he was saying, "Stronger, harder." Well, after everyone, he says, "Well, now I will show you how you should beat."
And then he did.
I had to lay down, and he showed me how to beat.
What did they use for these beatings?
It was a wooden stick, like it's not a baseball, something like a baseball bat, but shorter.
And then this was used. Then he showed you how you're supposed to beat by beating you.
Just to feel how hard you should beat someone.
After the liberation, Menachem, where did you go?
After the liberation, I wanted to go to Poland to find my brother, I was together with my brother in the ammunition factory.
Yes.
And my brother wasn't shipped out. I was shipped out. I didn't know what happened to him, so I wanted to go back to Poland to find my brother. But my brother left Poland, and he came to look for me, and we met in Buchenwald, which was also a long story how it happened. Well, that was a story. I wanted to go to Poland back, and I was already on a bus that was supposed to take me to Poland. But there came a woman, and she said she heard news that her son is sick in Poland. She has to go back to Poland. And she has to go back to Poland because I was the youngest person on the bus. They told me, "Well, you will go down, you will go with the next bus." So I didn't have a choice, and I went down. I left the bus. My brother, meantime, he went to look for me, and he came to Buchenwald to look for me because they heard that we were taken to Buchenwald. And he looked for me, and he came over there. He couldn't find me. He found they said that I'm not there. And then on a piece of paper, he found a piece of paper that I got from I got over there a suit after the liberation, and I signed for the suit. So he showed them that I got that suit. And they said, well, he was a youngster, so probably he left already. They left, those youngsters left here, Buchenwald, and left. They went, part of them to United States, part to Sweden, so he's not here. They went from here to France, and from France they are supposed to go to United States and to Sweden. So my brother wanted to go to look for me in France. And on the way he met somebody from our town, and he said, and they started to talk, and he asked me what you are doing. He said, well, I want to go to France to look for my brother. He said, but your brother, I saw him just here about 10 minutes ago. And he brought him over to me, and this is the way we met. Otherwise, if not that man, he would go probably to France, and I could go maybe back to Poland, and who knows when and if we would meet.
Do you remember meeting him? Is that a memory you have?
Sure, I remember we met, and then I wanted to go back to Poland, because this was actually my only nation then. But he told me nothing to go. There's no way to go to Poland. There are no Jewish people, and they hate the Jews the same way they did before. And we decided we will go to a town, to a port next to a sea that we'll be able to immigrate somehow from Germany, to leave Europe, to go away from there. And we went from over there. We went to Hamburg, which is a port on the sea, and that's how we were. That's how I met my brothers.
And from Hamburg?
From Hamburg, there were a Jewish brigade, which was in the British Army. There was a Jewish brigade. We met over there soldiers from the Jewish brigade, and they picked up a lot of youngsters. We were together. And we went from over there to Israel.
To Israel, and that was in what year?
This was in 1946.
What did you do in Israel?
In Israel, at the beginning, I was in a kibbutz, and then you probably didn't hear about it, but there was kind of unofficial army in Israel, which was called Palmach. I was over there also in Palmach, and then all what I went through in the concentration camps and the experience in Europe made me want to have a Jewish state. And I was a youngster, than 16 years old. I volunteered to that army, which was kind of an underground army. And I was one of the first soldiers in the Israeli army. And I took part in the War of Independence. I got injured very hard in the War of Independence. I survived, and I'm glad I was in that war.
Coming right after the experience you had, it must have been something.
Yes, but I was ready to give not only part of me, only even my life for a council like this.
What brought you to the United States?
What?
What brought you to the United States?
My brother, he came to the United States, and because he's the only one that was left from my family. And he was once here in a car wreck, and he needed me also here. I just came over here to be together with him.
And what year was that?
This was 1968.
1968, and was that in Nashville that you came? I mean, that's where he had located himself.
Yes, and I'm here in Nashville from 1968.
Do you have any idea of how he came to pick Nashville as the place to be? Another story, huh?
Yeah, that's another story, but it's an interesting
story. Tell the
story.
story, please.
His wife, Elizabeth Limor, they were also in Israel, my brother and his wife, and she thought that she lost all her family, like most of us did. She was just left by herself, and she was working as a seamstress in somebody's house, and she saw that there a picture of her brother, which was married to somebody from that family where she was working. And the brother, he survived. He was an engineer here working for a plant. I don't remember which plant in Nashville, Tennessee. So she got in touch with him this way. This is
I see.
really a miracle way that she found him. Otherwise, she wouldn't find him. And when she found him, he wanted her to come here. And she came over here. So she was here. Then I came to my brother.
We only have a short time left, and I'd like to ask you a few more questions. How do you think your wartime experiences in Germany or in Poland changed you?
Well, I learned that you never, no matter who you are, something can happen to you. And all I am telling now is, I would like that people will always remember that things like this, as much as unbelievable they seem to be, they can happen to anybody. And all you have to do is just remember that and do every possible thing that things like this won't happen again to nobody. Because I was lucky, but not a lot of people were not as lucky as me. So I was lucky and I survived, but this shouldn't happen to nobody in no time.
And again, these were not things you expected at the time. You didn't see them coming, but they can happen.
That's right. You never can tell who would be next. I don't know if the Germans would continue, if the Germans would be winning the war, and they would finish with all the Jewish people. I'm sure they would find, I don't know, Polish, Russian, Gypsies, whoever. Because exactly they didn't have no reason why to kill Jewish people. They didn't have to look for a reason to kill or to exterminate other people. If you want to do it, especially if they built factories for killing, and a factory has to work, you can't leave it empty, not working. They would finish with all the Jewish people in those death factories. They would find other material. They would find other people to kill.
Your feeling of being a Jew, how has that been affected, would you imagine, by the experiences that you've had?
Well, especially after I was in Israel and I fought for Israel, I feel very proud being a Jew. And I just feel like anybody else, like any other nation. I feel Jewish. I don't hide it. I don't ever hide. I am proud of it. And I teach my children to be Jewish. My children know all the history, all that I told you now. They know it from years already. I told them those stories from the beginning because I want them to know. I want them to continue knowing it and to tell it to their children, to my grandchildren. I also taught in some schools before students. I told them the same thing. Whatever you do, I just want you that once when you will have your children, tell them that you saw somebody that was in concentration camps and went through all this, talk to you. Because there are some people that say that it even didn't happen. There are some people that say that even, I know I went through it. All my family I lost. And there are people that say it never happened. So just all I want that people know that things like this did happen and never to forget it. And do every possible thing that it will never happen again.
Menachem Begin, thank you very much. I believe you have some photographs that maybe we might finish our interview with you showing.
I was 3 years ago. I went to Poland, to Treblinka, where my mother and brother got killed. There are still some cattle cars that people were brought in over there, and those are the same kind of cars that I was riding also to Buchenwald. And
did you have a picture of the inside of one of those cars?
yeah, I have inside also. It's not too good of a picture, but I have a picture also of inside of a car, which has nothing in it. And we were in a car like this for a whole week, about 100 people in a car, and no toilets, no nothing. No food. Some people dead, some people.
These actually were the cars that were used to get people to Treblinka?
Yes, they stayed over there and they left over there, and You don't see the beginning and the end of the cars. So long are those trains that you don't see no end, no beginning. You have here all that's left from Treblinka are stones like this that represent a town. This is the town it's written on the Częstochowa, which is my town. And this is, I took a picture of this. This is all that's left from my town and from my family. From my mother and my brother, that's all that's left. That's the only remembrance. You have over there, I don't have my glasses. It's hard to see here, but
yes. Maybe I could read that one. I think you have one that's also in Hebrew that you might
yeah,
show the
that's
camera.
right. That's the same thing as written in Yiddish.
Yes, why don't you show the camera that one? It says, there was here a Nazi extermination camp between 1942 and 1945. More than 800,000 Jews from Poland, USSR, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Austria, France, Belgium, Germany, and Greece were murdered. On August 2nd, 1943, the prisoner camp organized an armed revolt which was crashed in blood by the Nazis, Nazi hangmen. Penitence about the camp distance. I'm unable to read a portion. The Nazi murdered an estimated number of 10,000 Poles between 1941 and 1944. This was another area 2 kilometers from this town. What others do you have?
So just memorials. Kind of memorials written like never again in a few languages, in Hebrew, in Yiddish, in English, in French, I think. This is also kind of memorial. Because all the camp was destroyed completely, so there would be no signs that something like this happened.
It was destroyed by the Germans.
By the Germans, of course. Not to leave. I was also, when I was in Poland, I was also in Auschwitz. And over there, they also, they didn't have time to blow up everything. But you can see over there some places there, but a lot of it is just blown up. Whatever they could destroy, they destroyed just not to leave sign that something happened over there. That's kind of experience that really nobody should go through. Nobody deserves it. And nobody profits from it either.
Thank you very much, Menachem Limor.